All right, quick update on Caitlin Clark, Sophie Cunningham, and the rest of the situation around the Fever since head coach Stephanie White spoke at Fever practice. First of all, good to see Stephanie White back around the team. She had missed the last game due to personal reasons. Austin Kelly stepped in, did a great job, but you get concerned anytime you see that someone is away from the team for personal reasons, right? Like you never want to see that, and you always hope for the best. Seems pretty clear what that was about now, because Mike Breen addressed the absence of Lisa Salters from the NBA Finals from the sideline, saying that Lisa's mom has been dealing with some serious health issues. Stephanie White and Lisa Salters are longtime partners, so seems pretty clear what was going on there. And obviously, send my best, and we send our best to their family, and hope for the best as their family goes through a tough time. But Stephanie White was at practice and was speaking about the time that the situation that the Fever are going through. And of course, you have Clark sidelined and you have Sophie Cunningham sidelined, but both were involved in practice to a certain extent. Both were seen on the practice floor, which I take as a very, very encouraging sign. The fact that they're even out there at all is a big, big positive, because that lets you know that the process of getting them back on the floor has begun. The process has started. And, here's a little bit of footage from practice. Caitlin Clark at practice ahead of the game against the Dream. Some of the other players there, you see Sophie Cunningham. But, of course, just the fact that on the floor with the rest of their teammates, that is a good sign. And Caitlin was out there moving. You could see that in some of the footage too. So you take that as a big, big positive. Big, big positive. And here's what Stephanie White, the coach of the team, had to say about it when she was speaking to reporters, courtesy of Chloe Peterson. And this is the video. Here you go.
How about Caitlin? Is she going to be ready for tomorrow?
Oh, not for tomorrow, no. I think for us, it's we've got to work, both her and Sophie, back into, are they in basketball condition? What does it mean to go live? It's one thing to do some shooting drills. It's another thing to get out there on the floor, get back into movement patterns, rhythm, timing. And so that's what part of, picking and choosing things that they can be in practice so that we can see their progression. And both of them being out for long periods of time, you got to work your way back into being game ready.
I know Caitlin was supposed to be reevaluated this weekend. Was she cleared to return to basketball activities?
I don't know if cleared is the right word.
Okay.
I mean, we're ready to start ramping back up and make sure, it's completely different when you're just doing one-on-one workouts and when you're out there in 5-on-5, getting up and down the floor, moving laterally. So she's been allowed to do some practicing, not everything. And we're gonna be smart, and we're gonna be cautious, and we're gonna play the long game and work her back in very intentionally.
And Sophie too, she was limited on Friday, and what has she been able to progress and do?
Yeah, she was a little limited today. Again, it's seeing how they do in certain drills and certain actions. Getting them back into game condition. Again, this is an injury that she's aggravated a few times now this season, so making sure we're playing the long game and doing it the right way.
So that on Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham, and aggravated a few times could be taken for both players, really. I know it was said to be a new injury with Caitlin Clark, but she was dealing with the quad injury before the season started. Sophie Cunningham has obviously hurt that ankle a couple times. By the way, the practice footage I used was courtesy of WISH TV News in Indianapolis. But a few takeaways from that. Number one is that Ari McDonald's going to stay with the team for a little bit longer, at least until one of those two players is back. That's when she has to be released. So just brace yourself. McDonald is going to be released when one of those two players is back. That is just the cold reality of the situation. What happens after that remains to be fully seen. Secondly, obviously the long game is the smart approach with Caitlin Clark. You don't want to throw the season in the trash because she comes back a little early. And one of the reasons I think she probably aggravated the injury was 3 games in 5 days. So you want to find a good pocket in the schedule where you're not throwing her right back into the fire. So if you look at it, she's going to miss this Dream game. in Atlanta. The next game is the Liberty 4 days later. It's a nationally televised game, so I could see Clark suiting up for that. But I could also see taking an even more cautious approach and her returning on Tuesday, the 17th, against the Connecticut Sun. That would probably be what I would do. Now, I understand how they may. Here's the schedule that I'm talking about. You got Atlanta, she's out. New York, that would be 3 weeks since the injury. You see that ABC, you see that ESPN. That might be reason for her to return then. But if I'm the team, I'm probably going for that Connecticut game. Give her 3 more days off to be ready. Give her a tune-up game with a Sun team that, even though the Fever lost to them early, theoretically should be pretty easy for the team to beat, and then finally get Caitlin Clark back onto the floor at 100%, and hopefully this entire situation in the rear view. Sophie Cunningham's, an ankle, you can always re-aggravate it, but it's not the same sort of situation generally as a muscle tissue kind of issue, which is what Caitlin Clark has been dealing with. But all signs point to Caitlin Clark's return being fairly imminent. Let's just say within a week. That's the way I would put it. Day to day or this week to next week, because I think Clark will be back on the floor by that Connecticut game at the latest, if I'm reading the tea leaves and listening to what head coach Stephanie White has to say. And by the way, the Fever winning a couple games extends that timeline a little bit. It's, takes away the whole roof is collapsing in on the team kind of feeling that you might have felt. And there was one other interesting thing about Clark's return that I think is worth sharing. And it was posted by Rebecca Lobo, just while we're on the subject, because as good a season as Aliyah Boston has had this year, I think one thing that was I knew was going to happen, but caught some fans off guard is the lack of shot attempts that she's gotten without Caitlin Clark on the floor. And Rebecca Lobo shared this statistic, which I thought was pretty cool. Basically, Aliyah Boston's efficiency has been off the charts in the last 4 games, shooting 78% in that stretch, all without Caitlin Clark. But she averages 12.8 field goal attempts with Clark and only 6.8 without Clark. Could be poised for a monster scoring outburst when Clark returns. It's harder for Aliyah Boston to get shots because the whole defense is on her. They're collapsing. They're denying. They're doing all those things because of the defensive attention that does not need to be required to focus on Clark. Not to mention, Clark and Boston play a 2-man game, which gets Boston the ball in easy rhythm shots. But the fact that her efficiency has stayed up to that level is very encouraging. And the fact that she's just playing at that level at all is very encouraging. Aliyah Boston is playing by far the best basketball of her career. She looks better than I've ever seen her. And she is looking like a true superstar, right? Rather than an all-star, good player, good compliment. She looks like she's taken a leap this year, which, if you have Clark and you have Boston at that level, a lot of the other things take care of themselves, especially when you know what Kelsey Mitchell is capable of, what Lexi Hull has already proven, and the vets that are finding their way and contributing as well. But that's probably an underrated storyline if you really think about it, because so much else has happened. And it is worth noting just how much Boston has been balling.